For most students in Boston, getting an education means traveling from one part of the city to another. Students make trips between home and school, but also to after-school programs, sports activities, even jobs. Between tight schedules and tight budgets, it can be a challenge. That was the reason for the Boston Youth Transportation Project, led by our guest, a policy fellow in the office of City Councilor Michelle Wu, is also with the Tufts University Urban and Environmental Policy and Planning Program. We'd like to welcome Lily Ko. Thank you very much for being with us,
Hi,
Lily.
Chris. Thank you for having me.
So why do this study?
So I'm personally really interested in transportation. It's not just something that's, a matter of daily convenience or not. It really touches on many aspects of people's lives and issues in the world, social equity, public health, environment, and climate change. And so, I really wanted to explore a couple of these topics in the report, which I did. I looked at socioeconomic mobility of Boston youth, how their mobility was being affected by transportation barriers, and also the climate change issues, whether they had an affinity toward particular modes of transportation, and what that meant for our future. Yeah.
When I grew up, I think student commuting, when I was in Boston, it was more within the neighborhood. What are students doing today?
Oh, they're going everywhere. Yeah, within their neighborhood, outside of their neighborhood, and this is, and even outside of Boston, like the Metco students to get to school. And this is partially to level the playing field for their educational opportunities. There's a historic but very persistent racial segregation in Boston, and so this gives them more access to different educational opportunities. But one thing that I really want to stress is that it's not just about getting to school. It's about all their extracurricular activities. It's about all the enrichment opportunities that the city offers, like different museums and libraries and youth programming that's everywhere from different universities and colleges and private companies and nonprofits. And so really being able to access all of that.
What about the barriers? What are the most important ones?
The most important ones. So I would say affordability was a really big one that came up across not just during the school year, but also the summer. So just a little background information on that. So the school provides so the MBTA provides a discounted monthly student pass. And then on top of that, the city of Boston provides a free pass for qualifying students within their they have this walk zone policy. And so if you're a middle school student, you have to live outside of 1.5 miles from your school. If you're a high school student, you have to live outside of 2 miles from your school. But the problem with this is that many students get left out. Thousands of students don't get the free pass because they live inside of that, the walk zone. But they need to go to other places besides school, even if they lived within their neighborhood, which 2 miles is a lot to ask anyone to walk anyway. They still need to get to, like you said earlier, the sports practices, music practices, AP seminars. Those are all offered by the school, but not necessarily on site at the school.
Now, you have most students getting some kind of subsidy for their transportation, but you're with a group of students, you're doing something after school. Some of them have the subsidy, some of them don't. This starts to get pretty complicated, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, it does. They spend a lot of time trying to figure out transportation for themselves, for each other, and that was one of the really nice things that I learned from the students is like this solidarity that they had amongst them. They really tried to help each other out by scrounging up quarters for each other, by lending each other their transit passes if they knew that they were going to get a ride the next day from a parent, or just like tapping someone on and then waiting until they could tap on again to go in a different direction.
We're talking with Lily Ko, a researcher from the office of City Councilor Michelle Wu. Lily, what about some things that can be done to solve at least some of these problems? Some of the most, I guess the easiest ones to solve. What would you think of?
I'll give you two easy ones, but I would like to say that I think these issues require significant investment to improve our public transit system to make them more reliable, and the city needs to be investing in more equitable access for all students. But a couple of quick, easy ones. One thing that I learned from the students was, for instance, the charges that they're getting from schools about when they lost their M7s. Some students were getting new ones for free if they lost it, and others paid $5. Others paid a sliding scale all the way up to $65, I learned. So eliminating those charges, for one. because they're not equitable, and students already have an incentive not to lose their cards. They have to wait up to 3 weeks to get a new card in which they're paying for full fare for public transit, and so there's already incentive not to lose their card. Another thing is fare capping for the MBTA. Some students, often can't afford, especially during the summers, full monthly fare up front. But in the end, by the end of that month, they might end up paying more than the monthly fare. And so if the MBTA could cap either both the weekly passes and the monthly passes, that would not penalize the people that can't pay up front.
When the T is not reliable, it's a big problem for adults. What about the students? What did you hear from them?
Oh, I'm sorry.
When the T doesn't run on time?
Right, yeah, those are super interesting to me. So being late for school is the obvious one, but one of the really interesting things was the domino effect from that. So being late, they would have detention, and so then they can't get to work on time. They can't get home on time to relieve their parents to go to work, who are watching siblings. Being late for health appointments and job interviews were things I heard. So really there being a wide range of effects. And then being late for school, it's not just being late, but they're put at risk of having to attend summer school or not graduating once they hit a certain number of tardies.
One other question, you hear about all of these frustrations. Are we conditioning students to flee to cars to get away from public transportation?
There's reason to believe that we are. 80% of the students I talked with said that they prefer to use a car or use an Uber or Lyft to get around. And I also asked them what about when you become adults and you'll be working, and they still felt the same way.
What about bikes? Are they much of the solution?
I had hoped that they are, but there's still significant barriers to youth biking. The biggest one that came across many focus groups was the lack of road safety, lack of physical separation from the cars, and they talked about accidents that they were either in or someone they knew or something that they heard on the news, so they were very aware of car crashes, and there's a large fear of that, and so that's something the city has to address to get youth to even consider biking.
Thank you very much for being with us.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Lily Cole. Up ahead, the Dorchester Report with Jennifer Smith.